Welcome to the Biblical Perspectives for Leadership podcast, where timeless biblical truths meet modern leadership. We are thrilled to have you join us on this journey of exploring how biblical principles can guide us in leading with wisdom, integrity, and purpose. Whether you're leading in the church, your workplace, or your community, this podcast is designed to inspire, challenge, and equip you for the road ahead. Let's dive into today's conversation and discover how Scripture shapes the way we lead.
Welcome back to Biblical Perspectives for Leadership.
We are really excited to dive into today's material with you.
Yeah, because we're looking at something incredibly relatable. I mean, imagine for a second being handed the reins of an entire nation overnight. The stakes are literal life and death. The enemy is this massive, entrenched empire. And, well, your immediate visceral reaction to this promotion is to just frantically look for the nearest exit door.
Oh, absolutely. It's the classic fight or flight response.
Right. So the mission of today's deep dive is to look at leadership principles that apply just as much to everyday life as they do to those massive, world-altering moments. Whether you are leading a family through a brutal transition, or maybe running a small business, or simply managing your own personal journey through a period of chaos, today's material offers some genuinely profound insights into human nature.
It really does. And I think it is crucial to view this story not as a, dusty historical account, but as a mirror. It reflects the very same psychological hurdles we face every single morning. Totally. So the material we are exploring today centers entirely on the story of Moses. And, when most people picture Moses, the cultural shorthand is this fearless, larger-than-life figure standing boldly on a mountaintop.
Yeah, holding a staff, staring down the most powerful ruler on earth.
Exactly. But the reality of the story is that he absolutely did not start that way. I mean, he was full of deep insecurities. He was terrified of the responsibility.
Which is precisely why this story is so deeply relevant for you today. The overarching truth here is that leadership is rarely, if ever, born from absolute certainty. So we are going to extract three very common, intensely human leadership challenges from this material.
And we really want to make this practical for you.
Yes, exactly. Instead of just analyzing a historical figure, we're going to frame these challenges as questions for your own personal growth. The objective is to ask, how does this ancient hesitation reflect the exact bottleneck you are dealing with in your own life right now? So let's get right into it. The first major hurdle in the story makes it incredibly clear that you really cannot lead anyone else until you confront the internal barriers holding you back.
Yeah, that internal resistance is huge.
It is. This challenge is about feeling fundamentally unsure, totally unqualified, and completely overwhelmed by the task in front of you. The story takes us to Moses at the burning bush. At this point, he is just a shepherd.
Right, living a quiet life, actively avoiding his past.
Exactly. And suddenly he is being called to lead an entire nation out of captivity. His reaction is something anyone who has ever faced a daunting promotion or a massive life change can understand. In Exodus chapter 3, verse 11, we see his immediate response. He says, "Who am I that I should go to Pharaoh and bring the Israelites out of Egypt?"
Yeah, that is just such a raw human moment. What he is doing there is, it's his default psychological response. The moment he is presented with a monumental task, he immediately audits his own resume and, he finds it completely lacking.
He definitely does.
He looks at his current status, right, a shepherd hiding in the desert, and concludes that he lacks the pedigree, the power, and the rhetorical skill to execute this mission. But the core principle we pull from this material is a radical departure from how we usually think about qualification.
How so?
Well, the framework here suggests that God does not call the qualified. Rather, he qualifies the called. Perfection is absolutely not the prerequisite for leadership. Progress is.
Oh, I love that. Progress, not perfection.
Exactly. Moses was categorically unready in that exact moment, but the underlying promise of the story is that the necessary skills and courage are forged in the fire of actually doing the work. Delay is not a denial. Delaying your start because you feel unready is often just a sophisticated form of hiding.
Okay, let's unpack this, because what you were describing is essentially the ancient blueprint for modern imposter syndrome.
Oh, without a doubt.
It is that relentless voice in your head that whispers, they are going to figure out you don't actually know what you are doing. But we live in a reality that fundamentally demands a perfect track record before you even step foot in the room. I mean, corporations want a 10-year flawless resume for an entry-level position.
They really do. It's wild.
Yeah, we are culturally conditioned to believe that you must acquire the degree, the certification, and the absolute certainty before you're allowed to take the reins. So it feels incredibly counterintuitive, almost dangerous, to step up before you feel fully ready.
It definitely feels dangerous.
So how does stepping up unprepared actually survive contact with the reality of our modern, hyper-competitive world? How does this story shift our modern paradigm of having to have a perfect resume first?
Well, the modern paradigm you're talking about is built entirely around risk mitigation. Systems, corporations, institutions, they all demand that flawless resume because they are terrified of unpredictability. They want a guarantee.
Right, they want to know it's a sure thing.
Exactly. But true leadership, specifically transformational leadership that actually changes the status quo, is inherently unpredictable and risky. It requires stepping into the unknown. If the path is completely known and the outcome is guaranteed, well, you don't need a leader.
You just need a manager, right?
You just need a manager to oversee the checklist. The story of Moses flips our modern paradigm by arguing that capability does not precede the action. Capability is the result of the action. You don't stockpile courage and then take the difficult step. You take the difficult step, and the courage is generated as a byproduct of your forward momentum.
So the modern obsession with having all the answers first is actually a trap that prevents real leadership from forming.
Right.
You essentially have to be willing to be a beginner in a high-stakes environment.
Yes, beautifully said. And this raises an important question for you, the person listening to this right now.
Yeah, let's make this personal.
If you strip away the excuses about needing one more certification or needing the timing to be just a little bit better, what fear is stopping you from leading right now?
That is such a crucial question. If you are listening to this on your commute or while you're walking, pause and actually acknowledge that fear. Write it down even.
Yeah, acknowledging it is the first step.
Whether it is a fear of public failure, a fear of being judged by your peers, or just a deep-seated fear of not being inherently enough, putting a name to the thing that terrifies you is the mechanism that starts to dismantle it. A nameless dread is paralyzing, but a specific named fear is just an obstacle you can systematically strategize around.
Naming it strips away its mystical power. It moves it from a vague, overwhelming emotional state into a tangible, defined problem.
Exactly. Okay, so let's follow this progression. You do the hard internal work, you face the imposter syndrome, you step through the fear, you accept that you will learn as you go, and you actively begin to lead.
Right, you take the plunge.
You take on the management role, you start the business, or you step up in your community. And things actually work out for a minute. Moses successfully leads the people out of Egypt. But here's a brutal paradox of leadership. The moment you successfully lead people out of a problem, you are now responsible for their behavior in this new reality.
And human beings, under pressure, will inevitably mess up.
They absolutely will. Once you step through the fear and begin leading, how do you handle it when your team inevitably fails? Because the story transitions to an incredibly tense crisis. Moses has gone up the mountain to receive further instruction, leaving the newly freed Israelites waiting.
And waiting is hard when you're anxious.
It really is. The uncertainty of their new freedom becomes too much to handle, so they regress. They build a golden calf to worship. They completely turn away from the very vision they were just saved by, reverting back to the idol worship they knew in Egypt.
It is a massive systemic betrayal of everything Moses just risked his life to accomplish.
It is. So how does Moses handle this?
Well, in Exodus chapter 32, verse 32, Moses goes back to God to intercede for the very people who just destroyed his life's work. He says, "But now please forgive their sin, but if not, then blot me out of the book you have written."
Wow, that is a massive statement. He is tying his own existence to a team that just completely betrayed his vision.
He is essentially saying, if they go down, I go down with them. What's fascinating here is the absolute rejection of self-preservation. True leadership is ultimately about serving, not controlling.
That is a profound distinction.
It is. Compassionate leaders take responsibility and intercede, even when it is wildly inconvenient, highly uncomfortable, and entirely undeserved. Moses had the perfect excuse to walk away. He could have easily said, I did my part, I got them out. If they want to sabotage themselves, let them deal with the consequences.
But he doesn't do that.
No, he doesn't. Instead, he ties his fate to theirs. He stands in the gap instead of abandoning his people to their own dysfunction.
When you look at how this translates to a modern business environment or even a family dynamic, it runs completely counter to human nature. I mean, our natural instinct, especially when a team member or a child messes up, is immediate self-preservation.
Oh, definitely. We want to distance ourselves from the failure.
Exactly. The corporate instinct is to say, I told you so, or to assign blame to protect our own performance review. We want to make sure the higher-ups know that we weren't the ones who made the mistake. So how does Moses' radical accountability challenge that modern corporate instinct to just throw underperformers under the bus?
It challenges it because it exposes the fundamental difference between a manager and a leader. A manager views their team instrumentally. They are concerned with protecting the system and their own position within it. If a team member threatens the metrics, the manager amputates the team member.
Hooray, they cut their losses.
But a leader understands they are inextricably woven into the fabric of the team. By standing in the gap, as Moses did, you signal to your people that their worst mistakes will not result in their immediate destruction.
So what does this do to the culture of a team? If people know that failure won't result in immediate exile, do they just become complacent?
Actually, the opposite happens. When people are operating in a state of fear, terrified that one mistake will cost them their job, they hide their errors. They focus entirely on covering their tracks. But when a leader demonstrates radical compassion, the team stops leading from a place of fear. Knowing they won't be thrown under the bus makes them more loyal, more innovative, and far less likely to make catastrophic errors.
Because they aren't paralyzed by anxiety anymore.
Exactly. Which brings us to the next challenge for you, the listener. How can you lead with more compassion this week? What is one way you can show grace instead of judgment?
That is such a good challenge. Choosing grace when every instinct in your body is screaming at you to exert control requires immense internal strength. But is the dividing line between someone who just holds a title and someone who actually leads.
Could not agree more.
Which brings us to the final, and in many ways, the most insidious leadership challenge in this story. Let's say you have navigated the first two hurdles. You faced your fears, and you are leading with deep, radical compassion.
You care immensely about your people.
Exactly. But because you care so much, you are now drowning in the day-to-day operations. How do you survive the weight of it all? Because you are holding the entire emotional and operational weight of the project on your own shoulders.
And the tragic reality is that the very passion that made you a great leader is now the exact mechanism accelerating your burnout.
It is a vicious cycle. The story sets up this third challenge perfectly. It's about the danger of doing everything alone. We see Moses trying to handle absolutely everything by himself. He is operating as the sole judge for an entire nation. He's handling every single dispute, every minor problem.
Well, from dawn until dusk, just a massive line of people waiting for his input.
Right. He is completely consumed by the minutia of leadership. And it takes an outsider, his father-in-law Jethro, to intervene. The material captures this intervention with incredible bluntness. In Exodus chapter 18, verses 17 to 18, Jethro watches this exhausting process, looks at Moses and says, "What you are doing is not good.
Yeah.
You will wear yourself out."
It is arguably the most practical, grounded piece of advice in the entire text. Jethro identifies the toxic leadership mindset that so many of us fall into.
The belief that if I want it done right, I have to do it myself.
Exactly. The delegation trap.
Yeah.
We constantly disguise this mindset as a strong work ethic. We tell ourselves that we care more than anyone else. But Jethro clarifies that refusing to share the load, refusing to empower others, does not lead to effective leadership. It leads directly to burnout.
Here's where it gets really interesting. Because if you look at the startup world, they have a very specific psychological term for this. They call it founder syndrome.
Oh, yeah. That is a very real phenomenon.
It really is. A founder builds a company from scratch. They care about it like it is their own child. They control every process. But as the organization scales, they refuse to hand over the decision-making power. The founder themselves becomes the primary bottleneck. You see the exact same dynamic in micromanaging and parenting.
A parent doing their kid's science fair project because they want the outcome to be flawless.
Exactly. Completely robbing the child of the opportunity to learn. But let's be honest about why we avoid delegation. It is terrifying. For a compassionate leader, trusting others means accepting they might do it differently than you would.
And that is a huge vulnerability.
It is. It is scary for a compassionate leader. How do you reconcile the desire for excellence with the messy reality of letting other people take the wheel?
You reconcile it by fundamentally redefining your job. Your primary function as a leader is no longer to produce the work. It is to develop the people who produce the work. When you refuse to delegate because someone else might only do it 80% as well, you are actively stealing your team's opportunity to develop.
And you're guaranteeing your own exhaustion.
Precisely. Which leads to our final reflection for you to consider today. Are you doing too much on your own right now?
Be rigorously honest with yourself about that.
What is one task you can delegate to someone else this week, and who can you trust to help you? Sharing the load is the only way to survive the weight of leadership.
It is remarkable how much lighter the mental load feels the moment you even contemplate sharing it. So let's pull all of this together and look at the 3 massive paradigm shifts we've extracted from the story today.
It has been quite a journey.
First, we looked at trusting you will be prepared along the way, facing that fear and overcoming imposter syndrome, knowing the capability is forged during the process. Second, we explored standing in the gap when your people fail, leading with deep compassion instead of defaulting to self-preservation.
Yeah, refusing to throw people under the bus.
Exactly. And finally, building a team to share the load, overcoming the delegation trap so you don't burn yourself out.
These are massive, life-altering shifts. And if we connect this back to the bigger picture, there is a final, deeper thought I want to leave you with regarding the source material.
I'd love to hear it.
Think about the historical figure of Moses for a moment. If a historical figure leading an entire nation had to rely on a father-in-law's intervention to realize he was doing it wrong, it means leadership is never a solo, finished achievement. You will never reach a level of success where you are free from blind spots.
That is so true. We all need that outside voice.
We do. So it asks you to ponder this. Who is the Jethro in your life right now whose outside perspective you might be ignoring because you are simply too busy leading to listen?
Wow. That is a phenomenal, deeply uncomfortable question to sit with. Sometimes the absolute best leadership decision you can make in a given week is to stop talking, stop managing, and start genuinely listening to the people around you who care enough to tell you the unvarnished truth. Well, thank you so much for joining us for this deep dive. We hope this exploration gives you a much sharper lens on your own journey. Keep leading with wisdom and purpose in your everyday lives.
Thank you for joining us on the Biblical Perspectives for Leadership podcast. I hope today's insights have encouraged and equipped you to lead with faith, wisdom, and purpose. Remember, the greatest leader of all time taught us that true leadership is about serving others. If you enjoyed this episode and podcast, be sure to subscribe, share it with others, and leave a review. It helps us reach more people with these transformative truths. Until next time, keep leading with grace and walking in purpose.